Happy 4th of July, everyone. 250th anniversary of our nation. A great day, and we do have some severe weather of some concern, especially in one of the areas where it is actually forecast to be a concern, which is right around the nation's capital. You can see here on today's severe thunderstorm risk for Saturday the 4th, we have two areas of level 3 out of 5 severe weather anticipation there in Maryland and parts of Virginia and Delaware and New Jersey. And then the other one down here in southern Kansas, southeastern Kansas, kind of north central, northeastern Oklahoma. Both of those are forecast to be primarily strong wind events of the three severe weather categories we can have. That's the one that's being emphasized the most. So let's go and take a look at the east here. So Philadelphia, Baltimore, Washington, Fredericksburg, almost down to Richmond is in that level 3 enhanced area. And again, we can break this down. So this category, when you go from 1 to 5 over here, this is just kind of the coverage of any severe weather. Then, especially on day 1, day 2, we can dive into the details a little bit more. So this was updated in the late morning. This will be updated again in the afternoon. And the reason I emphasize that so much is there are a lot of population centers here and a lot of celebrations going on, of course. So on the severe wind risk side of things, we have a 45% chance or almost a 50-50 chance of a severe wind gust within 25 miles of any location. So that covers all this purple area right here. Philadelphia, go ahead and throw yourselves in there. But certainly the Washington and Baltimore area are in that zone. And then this hatched area right here is an attempt by the SPC to kind of give a probability of wind intensity, and that's what you see to the right of this here. So, and when they bothered to make a category, and for wind there are 3 levels of this. This is the lowest one right here. It's still looking at 86% of this is going to be below hurricane force wind, so that's below 74 miles per hour or less, but to be a severe wind, it has to be 59. So that just kind of covers that there. But there is a non-zero chance of some of these winds getting more out of hand. You can see the scale right here. It does indicate about a 16% chance, not much, not even 1 out of 5, that the winds are going to go above hurricane force. So again, where this is occurring is important just as much as the intensity level. And then we have the secondary area here of enhanced 3 level, and that covers much of south central, southeastern Kansas, north central, northeastern Oklahoma, as seen here. So areas that would be included: Wichita, very close, but certainly Stillwater, Ponca City, almost Tulsa, Bartlesville, to around the Chanute, Kansas area, Pittsburgh, Joplin, Missouri is included in this. And then, of course, we have that level 1 surrounding that that's yellow, and that includes the Ozarks, where I live. I don't see at this particular time a reason to do a heads up for the Ozarks. I would consider this video to be that. But if I do see something more serious organizing for us, I certainly will jump in and do that. Now, the severe wind risk, and this is kind of what I'm talking about, is actually focused, at least at this time, out to the west of the Ozarks proper. But Joplin, Pittsburgh, and those areas are actually in that area, and that's a 30% chance. So a little bit less than the one out east, but still pretty predominant, a 1/3 chance of a severe wind gust. And they have a much larger intensity field. So this is the scale, same as the east, but look at how much real estate's covered by this one. The other one was very small. This one's very big and does include about half of southwest Missouri, northwest Arkansas, all of it. So Springfield would be included in this category of severe wind. So the idea here is that clusters of storms would form here, and I'll show you some radar simulations in a minute, and then kind of organize into a line and kind of approach the area as they so often do in the summer. Very typical pattern. Of all the places in the country, though, this is the only place where there might be a tornado risk, way out here around Wichita and Emporia, Eureka, that area. It's only a 2% chance, and it would take some special conditions to come together. Because, when we get in this time of year, tornadoes are more mesoscale events. So depending on how thunderstorms interact, boundaries, that type of thing, which that gets to be kind of hard to do, especially more than a couple of hours out. So the tornado risk is not broad, but it is important. So let's take a look at NATOcast. First of all, let's go back to the wind risk. They have a wind product, and I do want to show you that on their graph, they have a 60% chance of a severe wind gust out in this area, and it's bigger, so it extends over the area that the SPC talked about, but all the way up to New York City. There's also an area around Pittsburgh, And then it shows this area out here over Kansas and Oklahoma as well. The hatching is a 10% chance of a 75 mile per hour wind or greater. So once again, Joplin's included in that, Oklahoma City out here, Wichita, those areas. And then out east, certainly the Beltway from New York all the way down to Baltimore, and Washington has that hatched area. NATOCAST tornado product is sticking to form here and putting a 3% chance of a tornado, a little bit higher, but almost in the exact same area that the SPC just outlined. And if we look at Colorado State University's model, no tornado mentioned in the Central Plains at all, and they put a little bit of a blip up there in Pennsylvania. But in both of these cases, the tornado risks are pretty low, not zero, but pretty low. And we want to emphasize, and I'm emphasizing, that it's the wind from any individual storm or a combination of storms getting into a line that'll cause the problem. And certainly they agree with this wind assessment out in that same area, putting it at 45% out in that Philadelphia down to Washington, Baltimore corridor. Let's take a look at some high resolution models. This is the HRRR. This is just showing thunderstorms, a simulation of what thunderstorms might look like at 4 p.m. So you can kind of see they're starting to bubble up already by 4 o'clock in the area that was outlined as having the highest wind risk. That's right there. And if we move 2 hours ahead to about 6, so they're right around the Washington and Baltimore area and heading back down to Harrisonburg, Charlottesville, Lynchburg, to Richmond, all in there. Again, this is just a model of where thunderstorms might occur. So, take it with a little bit of a grain of salt. But the overall indicator here is that these storms will pop up in the late afternoon and will still be around. So there's two hazards here. There is the hazard, of course, the wind and all the crowds and anything that might be toppled over. And then, of course, there's the fireworks themselves. So these might still be around even toward dusk. So just be advised of that as well. And then if we just keep the same time and now go back over to the Central Plains here, this is the way it's forecast to look at 6 p.m. through southeast Kansas and northeast Oklahoma. Got a few look like supercells to me. There's not quite enough wind shear to hold these together, but could be a few right around El Dorado there, off to the east of Wichita, right over here between Emporia and, let's say, Kansas City. Another little cluster of storms there. And then we move this one 2 hours ahead, and there's a little bit more widespread coverage, at least as according to the HRRR, by 8 p.m. Again, any of these storms could be producing wind gusts, and an isolated cell that can interact with another boundary might produce a tornado. It would do so, I think, relatively early, so in this time frame here, and then 9 later. Let's take a look at Sunday. Broad area of just a marginal risk of weather, and we get a nice clearing out here, which is welcome. And then still around the nation's capital, northern Virginia, southern Pennsylvania, over into New Jersey, almost to New York, level 2 for severe weather. Again, it's primarily a wind risk. You can see there's a 30% chance bubble right exactly where today's is. A little bit of a tornado risk thrown in there for good measure. Hail not really showing up much, and it doesn't. It starts to really have a waning impact this time of year. It'll pick up again in the fall, but mostly it's wind and maybe an isolated tornado when you get into July and the summer, if you talk about it at all. And then on Monday, again, the northern plains are back in the action, but in a very weak way. And we'll take a look at Monday's CSU, still hanging on to a little bit of a tornado risk, but also emphasizing a wind risk in the Carolinas. And then on Tuesday, and this is the last one, I believe. There's a Wednesday too. On Tuesday, maybe a little bit. And I only show these this far out if we have a significant or consistent 15% hatching or a color area. So South Dakota, parts of the Carolina coast there on Tuesday. Wednesday, even the Carolinas are subdued, and there's a little bit in Montana, and that's it. And then finally, we'll take a look at the supercell composite. So this is basically the percentage chance of a supercell, and a supercell is a thunderstorm that doesn't collapse on itself and has enough staying power to produce any type of severe weather. You can look at it that way. So this is just an accumulative effect over the next 7 days, emphasizing this area much more than this area, interestingly. And then the week after that, so it's the July 11th through the 17th period, back down into Nebraska, Iowa, and then back over to the East Coast that third week over around that same area has been emphasized today and for tomorrow for severe weather.